Okay, I think we're going to get started. I'm Kathy Heintel, and I'm from the Board of Education, and I'm the chair of the Facilities Committee. Melissa Merrill, our chair of the Board of Education, is here as well. And we have a couple members of staff here as well. Dr. Clark in the back, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Strickland. Where are you? Mark Strickland is here as well. And thank you, Dr. Facent, for letting us use your facility. We really appreciate it. We're here tonight because in December, the Board of Education passed a resolution seeking to look at possible realignment regarding neighborhood schools, to put people in a neighborhood school position based upon what happened a couple years ago for transportation efficiencies and other things. One of the things that has happened over the years is our transportation efficiency has declined because we're moving kids further away to school. So we engaged Dr. McKibben, Dr. Faust, and Mr. Cropper to help us with that realignment or the possible realignment process. They are also doing a student enrollment, 10-year student enrollment forecast and doing a capacity look. So they'll look at each school and determine, in conjunction with us, the capacity of each school, which will help determine what we can do as far as a possible realignment. We also the Board of Education formed a Student Realignment Citizens Advisory Committee, the CAC. The first meeting of the CAC is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at the Professional Development Center across the parking lot. That will also be live streamed just like this meeting, and all their meetings will be live streamed. And after tonight, you'll see the schedule of the meetings for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they will work in conjunction with Dr. McKibben, Dr. Faust, and Mr. Cropper with respect to a possible student realignment. They will not work with the Board of Education. They will make recommendations to the Board of Education in March or April of next year with respect to what they've been doing all year long. So that kind of gives you a little bit of overview from the Board of Education. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cropper to take over from here. But thanks everybody for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Heintel, and thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you coming to participate in this process and learn about the process. We believe in an open and transparent process and do this work all over the U.S. And so we really engage the public and encourage the public to participate. Tonight, I'd like to give you just a little bit of an overview on the realignment study and a little bit of background on it, and just to give you some information on how to follow the process and how to provide input. Before we do that, we'll talk a little bit about ourselves. We are McKibben Demographic Research and Cropper GIS Consulting. We are K-12 planners. We work with school districts all over the country, everywhere from 2,000 to 200,000 students. We've done this kind of work all over the U.S. We specialize in demographic analysis and population enrollment forecasting, school redistricting or realignment studies. We also do help school districts with facility planning and things like that, and also do some training in terms of how to use technology. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and it's a mapping system that lets you look at all data on a map. So we can look at we can map out the students and see where all the students live in the district, count students on any street or any neighborhood or within any attendance boundary. We can look at roads, the planned bypass. We can look at schools, all information that we can leverage from the county, and a lot of good data and information is available that we use for school planning. As I said, we've done work all over the country. A lot of schools in North Carolina and the East, primarily East Coast, but we have worked out west a little bit. Dr. McKibben is with us here tonight, and he is a PhD demographer, one of the best in the business at small area forecasting and facility planning and redistricting. He is taking the lead on the population enrollment forecasts that are going to be coming out soon, and he will also be assisting and working with alongside me in doing the realignment study process, as well as with Dr. Faust. I have over 20 years of experience in providing this type of work to school districts all over the country, and just I've really done this process all over, and so I know what works and what hasn't worked, and so we bring the expertise to the table and how things can be done efficiently in trying to come to a solution. And we also bring the technology piece too, because we have a lot of technology background. And most importantly, we bring an objective third-party view. So we don't have children in the school district. We don't have a stake in the game here. And so we are here from a completely objective point of view to give input and to provide information and data to help support the work of the committee. So a little bit of a background on why we're here and why we are here to do this, a realignment study. The school district is experiencing changes in enrollment as well as changes to the infrastructure that will have an impact on the district. There have been charter school openings in the past several years that have impacted enrollment at various schools within the district. And also there's a planned bypass that's under construction to help get some traffic off of Independence Road. And that could certainly and will certainly impact settlement patterns and where housing is going to be, future housing is going to be located and things like that. So that's something that we are looking at. The school district is also planning to add classroom additions to several schools throughout the county, which will be open on the 2019-20 school year. So there's classrooms being added at an elementary school, a middle school, and several high schools. So that has to be accounted for, and we're going to look at the added capacity and see how that works in terms of building utilization. So that's being incorporated into our study. And finally, as Ms. Heintel said, this neighborhood school concept, the district wants to examine boundaries to ensure that students are assigned to schools closest to their home. So we will be looking at proximity and be focused on several factors, but proximity and proximity from students' home to the schools is certainly something that we will be studying and analyzing alongside with the committee. So our objectives are to explore and develop student realignment options through a community-based process. So there is a community-based committee, a volunteer committee that's been put together to help work on developing options. And the committee's focus at the start of this process is not to figure out the plan or to solve the problem right out the gate, but the committee's focus is to develop a series of options that they can bring back to you as the public and share some 2 or 3 or maybe 4 draft options for the public to give us feedback and see what they think, so that we can continue to try to develop a plan that meets our objectives and criteria, but also tries to make as many people as happy as possible, knowing that some people are not going to be happy as a result of this, but we certainly want to listen and hear the public's feedback and make changes if it helps bring us closer to our objectives. Full implementation of the elementary, middle, and high school boundaries will be fall 2019 to coincide with when the classroom additions open. Although the committee will be focused on a plan that 2018-19 is when the hope is that most of this can be implemented in the 2018-19 school year. But there is an understanding that in order to account for the planned additions, the full implementation might not occur until the 2019-20 school year. So we were hired to do several things to help facilitate this. One of them was to develop supporting materials to help facilitate the study. That includes the 10-year population and enrollment forecast by school by grade. So that's what is underway and almost finalized. And then a school capacity study. So over the summer, I walked through all the buildings and met with the principals and to understand how the buildings are being used and what's the advantages and limitations of the different buildings and classrooms and things like that, to develop a capacity number that is adequate to arrive at a number that how many students the building can hold without overloading the building, if at all possible. We are facilitating a community-based process to develop this plan. And really, we focus to empower the community with the ability to give us feedback and to leverage your input and your local knowledge throughout the process. So we have a community-based committee, and then there's also going to be avenues on a school district webpage for you to provide input as well as when we get to the public information sessions, that will be an opportunity for the public to give us feedback on scenarios that are being considered. And finally, again, like I said, to leverage our expertise and our experience to develop a plan that are logical, efficient, and effective, that meet our objectives. So I mentioned the word criteria a couple times, and really the criteria are rules to follow when we start looking at boundary options. The school board has approved a set of redistricting criteria for this committee to focus on, for the public to focus on, and us as well. And really what we do is we look at if there's ever a line that's being considered to move, we go back to the criteria and see, okay, how does this bring us better to adhering to this criteria as a whole, or does it not? Or if it takes us closer to the criteria, to adhering to the criteria, it's something that we look into. If it's something that brings us further away from this criteria, then it's something that we don't consider. These criteria are to maximize busing efficiencies in transportation of students. So try to assign students closer to the home, if at all possible, which does bring forward transportation efficiency and so on and so forth. Establish clear feeder patterns and continuity. So feeder pattern is something that we will be studying, to the impact on feeder patterns, and that's feeder pattern is really just the elementary to middle school to high school progression. So a 100% feeder pattern is if all of an elementary goes to a middle school, and then all of a middle school goes to a high school. A 50% feeder pattern may be if an elementary gets split in half to 2 different middle schools. What we do when we look at feeder patterns is the best feeder pattern, if you do have to split a school, and sometimes you do, it's best to have a more balanced split than to have a very small percentage of an elementary school go to a middle school, because we're thinking about these, they're not only dots on the map when we're doing this work, these are children, and they're building social bonds and friendships as they go through school. So we want them to have friends when they go to the next level, so there's enough students, enough familiar faces as they go from elementary to middle or middle to high school. Balanced school facility utilization. So we'll be looking at the enrollment of the schools versus the capacity of the building, and to see what the percent of full per se of the building is, and we'll be trying to make that equitable across the school district. Account for future growth. So this is looking at the forecast as Dr. McKibben is developing, and seeing not only what it looks like today, but what are schools forecasted to be in the future, and how can we account for that and maybe be proactive so that we don't have solve the problem now, but then we have an issue in 5 years. So if there's a school that's forecasted to decline, it's possible that we may be able to put more students in it at the beginning, so that with demographics over time, it could actually go into a more efficient utilization. Likewise, if there's a school that's forecasted to grow, we may not fill it as full, so that there could be space for that growth that's anticipated to come through. Allow for grandfathering, and this is something that is really out of the hands of the committee. This is more of a policy-based criteria, but it's something that we see in almost every single realignment study that we do. And this is just a measure that's taken by the school district to help reduce the impact, so that to try to minimize the students that are impacted. If a student's currently in a system, try to minimize the amount of students that have to be impacted and have to move, if at all possible. And minimizing the impact on students, that's something that we do quantify with each option. As we start to have them created and the committee starts to develop options, we will be assessing how many students are impacted in any particular option, so that the committee can understand what the impact would be. Make every effort to establish contiguous zones. So this is to have one zone per school. And so that you'll see in some school districts, you'll have a school, and there may be one main zone around the school, but then another small neighborhood that's being bused through another zone to get to that school. And that's something that we try to avoid. And so try to have one boundary per school, or one zone per school. Use major roads and natural boundaries whenever feasible to define attendance zones. So that aligns with efficiency in transportation and also safety and security of kids, try to minimize the amount of times that the boundaries are crossing over major roads, understanding that it will occur, but having major roads and natural boundaries as the lines make it easy to understand the boundaries. And we always say that a good efficient boundary, a really efficient boundary, is one where you can actually describe it to a friend in a paragraph and say, oh, well, it goes down this street, goes up this street, goes down along the railroad tracks, and so on and so forth. That's an example of a good efficient boundary. One thing that's important to note is that all criteria are in no particular order. So the best plan is one that touches on all of these criteria as best as possible, but doesn't focus solely on one of the criteria. If you start to only look at one of these criteria, what happens is you start to get very far away from the others, and you start to have challenges and issues. So the best plan is one that touches on all these criteria as best as possible, but not focus solely on one of the criteria. So we've broken this process up into 4 phases, so they are data collection, data analysis, developing options, and then committee and public engagement. So we've collected data and information from the school district, student databases, information so that we can map out the students and see and count students and know how many students live in each neighborhood and subdivision within the district, school locations and capacity. The city and county have a lot of data, parcels, property lines, so we know where the property lines are so that we're not cutting a boundary line through the middle of someone's property and then that owner doesn't know whether they go to this school or that school. So we align it with things like that. Looking at the municipalities and where the subdivisions are, all that good information that the city and county uses, we take advantage of and use to help make this process even better. The Census Bureau gives us a lot of robust population and housing data that Dr. McKibben uses as a base for developing his population forecast, and then couples that with local data. And then the IRS is a good data source actually to understand in and out migration. So that the IRS reports number of households and persons per household that are coming into the county and where they're coming from. It even gives income information on those families. And then we also know how many people are leaving and what their incomes and what their household size are, so that we can understand what the migration looks like coming in and out of the county. So in terms of data analysis, we are doing a population enrollment study and a capacity study, which should be done within the next month. We plan on sharing some of this with the committee at their second meeting in July. Putting all this into a mapping system so that we can do some efficient and accurate analysis. One thing that you'll get familiar with as you start to understand and follow this process are the term planning blocks. And planning blocks are basically the building blocks for building realignment options. As you can see on the screen up here, I've just given a snapshot, and you could see the black and white dashed outlines represent a planning block. And within each planning block, we have a planning block ID number. So we'll see, and this happens in every community we work in, the community starts to align with planning block number. So they'll say, we are planning block 100, and this is what we like or what we don't like. And that enables the committee and ourselves and staff to really hone in exactly on the area that they're talking about and be able to understand the small area level of what the concern or comments that are provided by the public. We put a planning block ID number with each planning block, and then you'll see also a number below that represents the number of students that live in each planning block for public school students. So we have one that shows the K through 5th grade number of students in each block, 6th through 8th grade, and the 9th through 12th grade. And so these are going to be really the tools that are used to help consider making adjustments to boundaries, moving a planning block. And this takes this really gives the committee and the public more of power to be able to understand the impact of moving an area one way or the other, and not having to have a profession in geographic information systems to be able to look at options development. So it really gives the public and the committee the ability to develop options and understand the impact of changing options without having to have some robust GIS expertise. So that you can start to look at planning blocks, and we have a website ready to share with you, and you can look at it today or tonight or whenever you'd like. We also build what we call a background report, and this is something that we will give to the committee at tomorrow night's meeting. And this is really just a lot of and so it's we give the committee a 3-inch binder, and at the start there's only about this much paper in it. But as the process continues and as each meeting occurs, they will get more and more handouts and more materials. And they may request other data, and as the process matures, that binder will start getting more and more full. But really, the intent of the background report is to have is to make sure that everybody is referencing the same information, and there's no speculation. All this information is going to be shared with the committee, but we're also making everything available to the public on a web page dedicated to this process, which any of the public member can download and print off the background report or any materials that are being shared with the committee as well. As I said, there's an online map that we have developed to help track the process and start putting options on there. This is croppermap.com/Union County. And it's fully compatible with any device, so you could even pull it up on your phone right now if you wanted to and look at the map. And you'll notice on the left side, it's on a desktop. There's a layer list on the left that you can interact with and turn on and off layers. You can see the planning blocks in there. There's a help document that's in the top right of this site, so that you can pull that up and look. But this is really right now. It's kind of all we have are the planning blocks and the current boundaries in there. But as options start to get developed, we will be posting options up on here so that each member of the public can turn on and off options and see how they look and how areas that they're familiar with are impacted. Phase 3 is options development, and we haven't started options development yet. This will be something that we are going to start in the next week or two. Dr. McKibben and Dr. Faust and myself. And what we like to do is come to the committee with some what we call baseline options. So there are just 2 or 3 options for the committee to look at and react to hit the ground running. They're options that we develop, and they are all draft. Everything is a draft all the way through this process, but it's certainly a draft before we share it to the committee, and then the committee will look at those options, and they will start to vet the options and study the numbers, study the maps, and they can choose to disregard, throw out any option. They can modify an option, maybe make a hybrid if they like the west end on this map and they like the east end on this map. We may merge it to make another option. Or they may decide to create one from scratch and give us input on an option that hasn't even been considered. So it's really just to help to expedite the process and let them understand what a couple of scenarios could look like and what the resulting numbers would be. So the 4th phase is the committee and public engagement. And the most important factor when doing this process is to try to keep all lines of communication open. So we invite the public to each committee meeting to observe the committee's work as observers, but not participants. And as the committees continue to do their work, the public has an opportunity to provide input on the webpage, at the webpage for this project. And really, like I said, the focus of the committee for the first phase of this process with the committee is not to have an answer to develop a plan that they want to finalize, but develop a series of options that they can share with you to get your input. There's an 18-person committee that the school district has put together to help examine and evaluate these options and work through this process. The committee was selected based on objectivity, geographic distribution. So we want to make sure that there are committee members from all parts of the county. And the real value of committee members is to tell us what things are like what traffic's like at 5 o'clock at night, or what areas they see students walking to school, or what communities have more of a community bond, or they share the pool together. Those types of things are the local knowledge that we don't know, that the committee is going to serve as an extension and really give us a lot of that information that's very important to consider. This is a snapshot of the timeline and the meetings, and this is posted on the webpage, so you can go look and see all of the meeting dates that are posted on here. But you could see we have eight meetings with the committee, and the first 4 meetings are really like I was saying, trying to develop a series of options that we can take to the public, which will be September 19th, and that's when the first public input session will be held, and that's where we'll share some options with you. The committee will, and solicit feedback and get input from the public. Then there'll be, once we get input from the public, there'll be another series of meetings to continue options development, and one more public input session to get some more feedback on the modified options that are created here. And then after that is done, the 8th meeting, we will report the summary of the public's input, and as well as giving them the raw comments and all the information the public provides. And the committee will make a recommendation, which is anticipated to be presented in February, which that's when we'll present the recommendation, but then the vote wouldn't be until the following month, so March or potentially April, depending on the timeline. So how can the public participate? There's many ways for you to participate. Everything that's shared with the committee will be posted on this project webpage. So if you go to the Union County's webpage, you'll see Student Realignment Citizens Advisory Committee on the right, a link for that. If you click on that, right now it's kind of a shell. There's not a whole lot in there, but as information is presented and to the committee, it will be posted up there. All the meetings will be live streamed, including this meeting tonight. So a copy of that video will also be placed on that page for tonight's meeting, and as well as PowerPoint presentations and so on and so forth. There's also going to be a comments section. I'm not sure if it's there yet, but it will be there fairly soon, where the public can submit a comment, and you could type in anything you want, any thoughts about the process or the options that are being considered, and that gives you the ability to provide input that we can study and look at. We certainly track all those comments as they come through, and see if there's any information in there that can help bring us closer to our objectives. As I said, the public are welcome to attend committee meetings as observers, but not participants. So we're at the Professional Development Center. There's going to be an adequate space for the committee to do their work, and the public will be able to observe. And then we can always talk with you after meetings and such. But we do ask that you don't interrupt the work of the committee, because they do have a big task to do and need to stay focused on their work. And finally, the public input session on September 19th and December 14th. There are two sessions that'll be where we will invite the public to come out and look at options. It'll be somewhere, if it's in this building, we'll have a presentation like this, and then we will have copies of the maps on easels, large plot maps out in the cafeteria per se, where the public can go look at the maps and study, and staff and committee and consultants will be around the maps to answer questions that you may have. And we encourage you to, we'll have a survey formatted at that time where we'll ask the public to fill out a survey and give us input that we can report to the committee. So that's all we have for tonight. But what we encourage you to just keep an eye on the web page as new materials get posted up there. Our next meeting is going to be for the committee. It's going to be tomorrow night, and you're welcome to attend and watch the work of the committee. And we thank you for being here tonight, and look forward to getting your feedback and working together to solve a plan here.
Thank you, Mr. Cropper. Thanks to everybody for coming tonight. I wanted to let everybody know as well that we have a new facilities director, Dave Burnett. So he'll be a part of the staff working with Dr. Cropper, Dr. Faust, and Dr. McKibben, Dr. Faust, and Mr. Cropper on the process. And Mark Strickland is the assistant superintendent over administration and operations. Did I get that right? Awesome. And Don Ogram is also going to be helping on the project. So there's staff that's going to be assisting with all this as well. But we thank everybody for coming. Be sure to check out the website. The comments portion won't be open for probably another week, but after that, you'll be able to post comments and questions on that area as well. Okay, do you have the list with you? Okay, we picked, so there's 18 members of the committee. There's 2 from each of the 9 clusters. That's how we determined to select people, is allowing 2 per cluster. In the Cuthbertson cluster, it's Michael Shaw and Jennifer Stevenson. In the Forest Hills cluster, it's Chad Whitley and Mary Moore. And if any of these people are here, you can stand up. Marvin Ridge cluster, what's your name? Mary Moore, thank you. David Willis and Claudia Sandoval. In the Monroe cluster, it's Jimmy Benson and Jennifer Averill. Jennifer, thank you. Parkwood cluster, it's Lee Henage and Patricia Kolowski there. Piedmont cluster, Heather Pugh and Todd Price. The Porter Ridge cluster, Glenna Bianchin. Is that how you say it? Say it again. Okay, thank you. And Amy Erb. The Sun Valley cluster, Sarah May and Jeffrey Joust. And in the Weddington cluster, Eric Sherman and Mary Zareski. Back there. Thank you. So thank you for the committee members for coming. That's how we selected them back at the April board meeting. We had 88 applications, and we went back to the people that applied and told them the commitment, because as you see, there's a big time commitment for the committee members to be doing this. So we went back to them, and we ended up with about 70 applications at the end, and we determined 2 per cluster. So, and the co-chairs of it are Lee Henage and Sarah May, and they're just going to help with, getting things organized and things of that point as well. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah. Okay. The question is about the grandfather policy, and I don't think we can give any. The board hasn't made determinations about that, so I don't think we can give any criteria or anything around the grandfather policy at this point in time. That's correct. That was what was up there, that no questions asked grandfathering. That's what that's saying. Yes. Yes, those are rumors. There's nothing that's been, you're right. We haven't received anything yet. We have not seen a capacity study. We have not seen an enrollment forecast, and the committee hasn't even had their first meeting yet. So those are rumors. lot of the driving, she's asking what the driving force was. The driving force behind this was transportation efficiencies. We lost about $900,000 a year in transportation efficiencies from busing people further away. And really the point of this wasn't to take questions at all, but just an informational meeting from their part. And I just wanted to add that. Yeah, and some of the schools that were overcrowded before are still overcrowded today. But thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate it.